Welcome to the Remington Podcast, where we take a deep dive into all things ammunition. I'm your host, Audrey Mays, and today I'm with Director of Centerfire Products, Chris Carson, and Head of Research and Development, John Langenfeld.
Good afternoon.
We're here to talk about John's most recent, really spectacular trophy elk hunt. Woo! Everyone should hear about it because it's really awesome. But first, I want to ask, a lot of people out there dream of hunting in Colorado, but they don't quite know the steps. So it's a draw system in Colorado, right? And so can you walk us through how you went about getting a tag?
Well, friends of mine invited me to go to this place. It was a private ranch, and they've hunted it a couple years in a row now. And so whenever I was going to, I agreed, I'll get in on this. They gave me the information of where to put in. So when you get on the Colorado website, there's some information in there, like units and things like that to put in. Of course, they just sent it to me and said, here's what you use. But there's a book that comes out from Colorado, and you can probably get online and figure it out, that's got the unit numbers and everything. So you want to make sure that when you do fill that out, that you put in the right numbers and for what season and everything, the coding that you put in when you apply for it. The one thing that I did have a few points, even though one of the guys that was on the hunt with us, well, the other two hunters, they didn't have any because they hunted there last year, so they'd used their points. But for where we were going, you didn't need any. They drew them. But I had two built up for elk because I had put in for a couple of years earlier. I went on a mule deer hunt in Colorado. And so since you have to buy an out-of-state license when you apply for points, even though you're not going to hunt that year, I went ahead and put in for points for antelope and elk, even though I was doing mule deer. So I had a couple of points, and I drew the tag. But fairly easy process, but I think without your outfitter, if you're going to go on a guided hunt like I did, they can tell you if you got any questions. I'd holler at them, and they can say, here, do this or do that. But otherwise, get a copy of that. It's kind of it usually comes in the mail every year once you go, but you can get online and figure out, what unit. But I'd probably say, ask your guide, ask your outfitter if there's any confusion when you're filling that stuff out online. Yeah,
it's the Colorado Fish and Wildlife, like big game hunting book or something. It comes out every year. And then, so was your tag like a landowner tag? Was that the deal?
Gosh, I don't. It was private. It was on a private ranch. So I don't remember if it said landowner. We call landowner tags in Illinois ones that they get. And
hand out.
Right. Because you own so much acres. I know in Colorado they've got ranching for wildlife. If you own, I think it was over 20,000 acres, and then they would get what I would call like a landowner tag. So this wasn't one of their tags. I applied for this, I drew it, it was mailed to me. So I don't think that would constitute a landowner based on, past history of, living in Illinois and where we got landowner tags, my grandfather did for his property and things like that. So, and the acreage that we were on wasn't over 20,000 acres. So this wasn't in ranching for wildlife. So we were hunting the first rifle season.
Okay. Yeah. So pretty close to archery season, right after the rut.
Right after it. Well, we caught the tail end of the rut. When I got there, they were still bugling, and, the bigger bulls that they were seeing during the archery season had kind of peeled off already, and were out in their little hideaways, and I guess resting up from the rut and everything. They weren't still with the herds roaming around, but we still had a great hunt and took some good quality bulls. But if if they do have property in ranching for wildlife, you can hunt earlier with rifle. So you can hunt the rut with the rifle if that, if the outfitter, the landowner, whatever, has got it in ranching for wildlife. And then they do get tags for that. And then the one thing, and I'm not familiar with all the details, but there's some portion of that where residents will get to hunt that private land if it's in that ranching for wildlife program. And I don't know what all entails to be able to do that, but that's one of the stipulations, if you're going to put your property in ranching for wildlife, that's kind of something that the, like I said, the residents get an opportunity to do.
Hey, Chris, have you ever been on a guided hunt before?
I have.
How do you go about picking a guide usually?
Good question. John and I have hunted together before on a guided hunt, and the outfitter can really make or break it. Where we went last year, mule deer hunting, was start to finish. You knew what was going on when you got there. You knew who was with who as far as the next day. If you were going to flip or flop or go to a different location, you were always informed. But one of the most intimidating things is finding somebody.
Sure.
You know, whether you're just going online or you go to a show, and you're wanting to deer hunt or elk hunt or antelope or whatever, you're kind of jumping off in the abyss of, I don't know anything. They've got 4 reviews on there and everybody gives it 5 stars, but they're not going to put anything negative on there anyhow. But I've been on a hunt before, on a deer hunt in a different state, where we took riders and it was a disaster from step one. I mean, it was odd. And, you know, we're trying to, you know, babysit's not the right word, but we're trying to coddle and caress and take care of the riders
Host
the
them.
whole week, be
Right.
the host,
Yeah.
coddle, caress.
Make sure they have a good time.
And when you're having to make up for the outfitter's
Yeah.
lack of being there
Coddling and
or
caressing.
coddling, you know, whatever, even cooking, you're kind of like, oh gosh, we're this is going to be a long week.
Yeah.
And so, do your diligence of talking to these guys ahead of time. You know, don't just look at photos, but
You get
if
references.
you can get references and call somebody, and, you know, don't just take the 3 numbers they gave you, but okay, let me hear somebody else. I'm not going to say you can get burned, but there's guys that are new, and sure, they've got to learn, and that's part of it. But, you know, there's outfitters that are just in it for the check, and they don't really care if you kill anything or not.
Or
They
have a good time. That's really
they're just
whole
running
thing.
people through.
Yeah.
And that's tough. And, you know, especially if you're only going to do this once, or maybe you're taking your kids on a, you know, hey, we've saved up. And when you're frustrated from start to finish, and, you know, whether you kill something is always a bonus, but you want to have fun.
Yeah.
You know, and you don't want to just, oh my gosh, this was a bad decision. I've wasted my money. I put in for X number of years for points, and I picked the wrong guy. You know, maybe spending a couple, you know, more dollars on another guy would have been better. So you're always second guessing yourself. So, you know, when we do hunts as a company, you know, we just kind of go there. We don't really have input.
Right. Because you know that you want a species and you know you want a location. Yeah.
So you've got that. But I do stuff on my own too. And I've met a guy at a hunting show, you know, not as Remington, as me, that I now take my kids to, you know, and we turkey hunt and we deer hunt, and our kids are the same age, and we've got the whole kind of family atmosphere going when we get there. So, you know, there are those guys out there that you can, you know, be friends with beyond. You know, I talked to guys I turkey hunted with 10 years ago that haven't hunted with, but you've built a relationship with those guys. So there's pros and cons of everything. You know, cost is always a factor, but I would just say do your research and talk to people. And if you know somebody that's been before, that's always a great, you know, avenue. Somebody in your area, you know, just going blind and, hell, I'll go with this guy because they got cool pictures on their website. Might work out.
Might not.
So
rolling the dice for sure.
So, and you know, we've put in for Colorado. I didn't put in for a tag. I just bought points for upcoming years. And I think you put in for the same tags, you know, that we're one of the guys we met that does some mule deer stuff. So you build anticipation. You might take years to go on one of these things. And you like I said, if you kill something, great, but you want the relationship, and you want the guide to do guide stuff, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You want the whole experience to be great, not just taking an animal to be great.
Sure.
Yeah. And so, John, you said that you knew these guys.
Well, my friends have hunted with them for the last 2 to 3 years.
Gotcha.
And so, kind of my mentor, he used to hunt the ranch. It was literally right across the street, you know, off and on for probably the past 15, 20 years. And so he knew that area very well, and knew that it, you know, had good animals and things like that. And, knew the outfitter, and so was able to talk to them. And so of the 2 guys that were on the hunt, you know, all 3 of us were named John. So, but, you know, one of the Johns, this was his 3rd consecutive year to hunt the ranch. And then the other John, this was his 2nd year to hunt it. And so, you know, I trust them. They're seasoned big game hunters. And so when they said, hey, you want to come on this elk hunt, I knew we weren't going to have a bad experience from, you know, poor guides or things like that, that it was a good quality area, top-notch operation. You know, we had a good place to stay. And so, yeah, I mean, there was no negatives on this trip. And, you know, we hunted call it the Stonewall area, which is west of Trinidad, and on a 5,000 acre ranch there. So that's how it all started. A friend of mine said, "Hey, we're going to go on this trip again. You want to get in on it? There's going to be 3 of us on the first rifle season, so we're not overcrowding it with people trying to. The outfitter wasn't just trying to make a buck and say, okay, let's have 10 people in here. So good conservation, good opportunity for everybody that's on the hunt to have a it's still hunting. They're not tied up or high fenced or anything. So." That's how it started. So then after that, it was, from a guided hunt standpoint, pay the deposit. Now you got the hunt booked, get the tag. Okay, everything's good. And then, get prepared and wait,
Right.
And that's one thing that I take pretty seriously. And I think, I may put too much pressure on myself to perform well from a shooting standpoint, because the last thing that I want to do is wound or lose something on a hunt like this, not just because it's a live animal, but also they're not cheap. Something you've looked forward to for a long time. And so I go out, do a lot of shooting, practicing, know the loads, know everything. I want 100% confidence that when I'm ready to squeeze the trigger, I know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, probably for the last, probably 2 months, every weekend I've been out at the range, testing, making sure everything's where I want it to be, checking trajectory at the longer ranges, making sure that everything's hitting there, and then also kind of bringing a spare rifle up along with the primary that I was going to use. And in this situation, I was glad I did, because the weekend right before I was going to leave, the scope that I had on the primary rifle I was going to use, it died on me. It wouldn't hold 0.
Wow. Okay.
Lost it. And it was one of those things where the weekend before, everything was perfect. Excuse me. Anyways, when I went out that weekend to shoot it, point of impact had shifted. I thought, what's going on? So I readjusted it, tried it again the next morning, and it had already shifted again. So, now I'm in a time crunch. Luckily, I was bringing up a spare, at the same time.
The whole time.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I was going to use that one, which the last time I'd used that was with the spare rifle that I was bringing up alongside of it was my 300 that Chris and I had used on the mule deer hunt in Utah with 300. It was a 180 cut. So I had that one. I was like, okay, I'm just going to use my 300. I've got 3 days before I get ready to leave. And, one of the other Johns on the hunt was like, well, what are you going to bring for a spare now? And I was like, oh gosh, what am I going to do? Not that I hadn't thought about it. I was going to take the one. So I started digging through the safe, and I had a 338 in there that, I was experimenting with some hand loads with back in February. And of course, I've got my loading notes and everything. So I pulled them open, seen what load I was experimenting with, and it was sighted in. Last I shot it dead on at 200 yards. And so for that box of bullets, I think I had like 32 bullets, in the box. And I thought, all right, well, I'm going to load those up. And if this thing's, still sighted in, whatnot, then I'll take it as my spare. And so I went to the range the day before I left. I checked it. Everything was good. So I was like, okay, I got 2 rifles now just in case something happens to one of them. That may be a personal preference for me to have a spare that's my own rifle, because the other 2 Johns, they also had spares for theirs. So, there were 6 rifles between the 3 of us. But, I'm gunny. I like rifles, and that's part of the
Gun nerd.
Gun nerd.
Yeah.
And you never know what's going to happen during
don't.
travel and all that.
Yeah. But I like to use my own rifles. That's part of the experience for me, and the enjoyment is being in the field using a rifle that you feel like is, up to the task that you've, whether it's, an inherited gun or something that you've built or purchased. And I know guys that hunt that kind of don't have that connection with the firearm or the weapon. They just love to hunt, and as long as they have a reliable tool, whether it's a bow, a handgun, rifle, doesn't matter. For them, it's all about the hunt. And then on the flip side of that, I know guys they're just gunny and they don't really hunt much.
Right.
They just love to shoot. And so I feel like I'm kind of right in the middle, where I like to hunt, but I also like guns. And, the hunt without my rifle just isn't quite the same. And so for me, putting the rifle together with the scope that I want on
I
it.
just want the antlers.
You just got expensive hobbies.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
That's
So,
all that
Until he got
is.
married. That changed.
But
I don't think it did.
No.
But yeah, I know people on both ends
Yeah.
of the spectrum, and
Yeah.
you're totally correct. Chris just likes to go on the hunt.
No, I'm a gear guy. I'm a gun guy, but I'm a gear guy too. Gear dork.
That's for sure. I went to you and was like, hey, what bibs do I need? Because I knew you were the gear guy.
And that's a whole nother kind of avenue down this rabbit hole. Gear and being in shape.
Yeah, being in shape's important.
We're in Arkansas, so what you're going to wear here, and I know it wasn't cold where you were at, but when we went last year, it was cold. You're not wearing cotton and what you're going to go sit on a deer stand with.
Probably not.
It's not going to work in the mountains. It's too bulky, especially if you're moving around a lot. And you'll sweat too much or whatever. So what you wear in one part of the country is going to be different in another. And if you got to be in shape, you're going to go on a hunt where you're going to have to be moving. If you're sitting, somebody's driving you around, that's one thing. But if you got to do this, even if you're doing something once or twice a week just to get your cardio going.
I don't even just difference. Doing normal stuff in Colorado is hard because it's so
the elevation
high.
change.
Yeah. So I mean, how high were you in your hunt?
Well, we slept. We stayed at 10,000. We were probably hunting at 7, 8.
So lower than where you base camp was.
Yeah.
10,000.
We were at
Things
10
change.
last year.
Oh, I could feel it for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, I wasn't. I didn't get altitude sickness or anything, but by the time I got there, on the way home, I started to feel like, oh, this is normal again.
Yeah.
Right.
But I was trying to stay hydrated. The hunt wasn't rugged to where like up and down mountains and hiking and all that kind of stuff. We did most of our glassing was done either from a vantage point where we could get to fairly easily on foot, or, we were driving county roads and glassing herds and things like that. So, not as physically demanding as some hunts could be. This one wasn't that bad.
Yeah. When I bow hunt in Colorado, I do base camps usually at like 10, and then we go up to the 11 and 12 to hunt because it's still hot. So like you're trying to get where it's cooler up there. And I mean, just putting your boots on at 10,000 is pretty rough sometimes. Don't look at me like that. It's true. I'm just saying, like you said, take a walk before you go hunting.
It's been about 3 years ago, but we went to Norway. And we were moose hunting. So you're with the guy, and I was with Sven.
That's his name?
For this purpose, his name is Sven.
His name's Sven.
And he was on the Norwegian national ski team.
Okay.
6'4", perfect V. His steps were about as long as his table, and here I'm trying to keep up with this guy going up the mountains, and you're hunting in this fern type stuff that they have over there. It wouldn't have mattered how much in shape I was. Come, little man. It's like, Sven, you're going to slow down, bro. But he was too fast for me, and we were not a good pair, but it worked out. But
yeah, I can't imagine that. But some people are just mountain goats.
Yes, he was a
they
true
just
Billy goat.
belong up there. I'm not one of those people, but I try my hardest. But so you said the hunt wasn't like physically straining.
No, not. I mean, it could have been. One of the Johns, I think the first day they were out walking 4 miles.
Mm-hmm.
On
purpose.
That's what his guide wanted to do. They covered a lot of ground. I didn't do that. We didn't need to.
Did you get out of the vehicle, or did you shoot from the window?
No, you can't do that. No shooting from county roads.
Okay, that's just a mobile blind.
Well, observation point.
I think you have to be like 100 yards or something away from the vehicle in Colorado.
There's a distance. Yeah, you got to be off the county road.
Meters or feet?
I think it's yards.
Oh.
I don't know. So it wasn't too bad. We got out, we hiked up a little bit, got to some vantage points. We did glass in a few areas, but I mean, it wasn't something like an elephant hunt where you're walking, 10, 15 miles a day or something like that every day to try to find what you're going after. At least this time. Like I said, what I would probably do is talk to your guide, talk to your outfitter before you're going to go somewhere, figure out how the hunting is going to be. Those are questions that I asked to friends of mine that had been there before. What are we going to do? How are we hunting? Are we sitting over meadows? Are we spotting and stalking, glassing? Are we riding in trucks? How's it going to go? So that way I kind of knew what I was getting into.
How far did you walk on your last elephant hunt?
My last elephant hunt in my dreams?
Yeah. Okay. Just a subtle brag. subtle brag. My last elephant hunt.
Right. Yeah. What? So how'd the hunt go then?
Well, there was a lot of elk. So
okay.
We went out the evening before and scouted, and you could see elk in the meadow, things like that, bugling and whatnot. And so the first day, we seen a huge, probably 350 class bull, had his main beam snapped off on one side right above his third, which is really unfortunate, and it was just getting daylight, and so he got a pass because it was first thing. If it had been a little later in the hunt, we could have seen him, a little bit better. He might have caught a bullet, but first morning, you haven't even really got into it yet. You're just a little reluctant. If he'd have had both sides, we'd have been, cleaning him that shortly thereafter. But there was a lot of elk. They were bugling. That was my first experience being around that and hearing them in person, and it was just great. It was exciting. I loved the hunting aspect of elk in that country. You can see them in the meadows. You can see them going into the pines. And, there's always action. There's always something going on to kind of keep you going. You're not just, where I come from in Southern Illinois and, here in Arkansas too, you're sitting on a deer stand for whitetails and, it's an ambush. And so you're sitting and you're waiting and out there on this hunt, there wasn't too much of that. We sat on a meadow the first evening because we knew there were elk that could come our direction. But for the most part, there was always something going on, keeping you entertained. And of course, since we were driving a lot in the truck, I was able to talk to the guide a lot and have good conversations about, the hunting and rifles and bullets and stuff like that. So got to know him, very well. But second morning, I harvested my elk. We got a call from one of the other guides, Vince. He was up on the wall, and they glassed the elk that I eventually took and said, hey, he's over here in this meadow, good bull. You guys should go take a look at him. And so, we got over there. We seen him, something that we knew we was going to go after. And so we got out and headed up the side of the meadow through the pines and basically intersected the elk. And he was 180, 200 yards from us. He came out broadside. Everything happened rather quick because we expected him to still be in the meadow, so we were kind of glassing that. And he walked out, and I seen him. And so, the guide, Paul, he was in front of me. I said, Paul, he's right there. And so he, quickly put the glass on him and said, yep, good bull, and then, flipped up the sticks. So I got up on the stick, standing up, and I know that, he just started to take a step when I squeezed the trigger. And I didn't hear the bullet hit. I had some passive hearing protection in, so I didn't hear a thump. And, of course, under recoil, I knew the crosshairs were where I wanted to be when the gun went off. And so he took off. The elk took off running at the shot. And so I was prepared to keep going. I didn't just stand there and, lollygag and watch him. And so I hit him two more times, one a little too far back. It wouldn't have done anything. And then before he cleared the meadow, there was about a 40-yard gap, and there wouldn't have been an opportunity to hit him again. And I shot him right on the point of the shoulder, and so it dumped him right there, and that was it. So, everything worked. The gun worked. It cycled good.
And you had practiced shooting that way off sticks, and
I've done that before. Yeah, I didn't practice cycling and standing up this particular time. I shot off of. I shot off a backpack and rested it under my arm with a 3-legged tripod and things like that at different distances. Get off the bench.
Yeah, get off the bench is key. Because that's not going to be the case in the field.
Yeah. Oh no. So, but it all worked out.
Yeah, well, it's good to hear, and it's a bull. Like it's good looking.
Oh yeah, it was a good. I didn't put the tape on him. I'm going to guess it's probably 310, 320 ish. As far as in there 6x6. He was. Broke just a little bit, on the front, but I mean, just a little chip on the point, but no big deal. So yeah, super excited. My guide was great. Got to learn about him and his family. He lived in that area his whole life. Been hunting elk for forever, and so a great kind of a guide to have. And you were talking about people making or breaking the hunt and whatnot. One of the Johns hunted with a guide that he used to hunt with. Like I said, he used to hunt across the road for many years, and he knew one of the guides from back in that time period. So they synced up to go together. And then me and the other John, we basically picked of the two that were there. So you get to know them, personalities and things like that. And I know the outfitter was like, well, who do you want to hunt with? And well, the other guide hadn't showed up yet, and the other John are like, well, I don't know. So anyways, Paul showed up, and he started talking to us and whatnot. And, I just felt like, this guy's got a good person. Not that the other guy didn't have a good personality, so don't take it that way. I was like, I'll just hunt, I'll hunt with Paul, and it worked out. There was no issues there. We had a lot in common. He was pretty gunny, so that was kind of fun. We weren't just riding along in the truck looking and, not talking about much. We had some stuff in common to discuss. And He talked all about using a 280 Remington for years, shooting elk with 140 core locks, and now his wife's adopted the rifle, and he can't get her off of it. It sounds like he's trying to get her into a more modern cartridge because limited availability. We run them a couple times a year, and just probably one SKU, but maybe I'll get him some for Christmas or something. But, he's currently using a 280 Ackley Improved. And, we just talked about elk cartridges in general, things that he sees that clients bring, and rifles and scopes, and talked all about, what's trending today in the long range stuff. And of the three of us that harvested elk on this hunt, they were all under 200 yards.
Did they say anything about anybody ever bringing the wrong gun? Undergun, per se?
Not really. No, I think if it would be probably just be the opposite of that people would bring something that's too large that they really can't shoot well.
Sure.
They flinch at the shot, and it's not intentional, but something that they're just not used to. They think, elk is so much larger than what I'm used to deer hunting with, and so they bring something bigger. If you're using a 280 your whole life, that's adequate with the right kind of bullets, rather than going buying a big 300 or a 338 or 7mm that. You're not used to that kind of recoil and making a poor shot. So,
and shot placement is everything.
Oh yeah. The one guy, Justin, I think I heard that they said that of course, all three of our guides were from this area and lived there their whole lives. And I think Justin was using like a 240 Weatherby. So a bullet in the right place, is a whole lot better than a big old bullet in the wrong place. So, Anyways, good stuff there. Getting good guides. And we shot our rifles when we got to camp before we hunted. Everything was spot on. I always like doing that just to make sure it makes me feel better. Nothing's moved on the trip out there. So, yeah. But everything was under 200 yards. I think the first John killed his at about 150. He was shooting a 28 Nosler. New cartridge for him. He's experimenting. Seems like, he hunted with a few cartridges a lot during his life, and now he's kind of changing it around. And on the 7mm episode, I referenced, a friend of mine who didn't give the 7mm an opportunity early in his hunting career. Well, that's the guy that he was on this hunt. And so he used the 28 Nosler. And then the other John, he was shooting a 300 Weatherby. And then I had a 338 Win Mag. So I was going to hunt my 300 with the cut. Like I said, that was going to be my primary. And I was just going to take my 338 for my spare. But on the drive out there, I thought, so my 338 Win Mag is a nice custom rifle. It's a Darcy Eccles classic. Very pretty wood gun, and I haven't.
You thought about the pictures.
I haven't hunted it. Well, I haven't hunted the rifle yet.
He's thinking magazine cover,
right?
Yeah.
Catalog spreadsheet.
Well, that rifle actually was on a magazine cover. Back in '92.
Of course it was.
Yeah. So I have not hunted it since I acquired.
What year?
90. I think 92.
Were you born?
No.
Oh. Yes, I was.
I know you were.
I wasn't too old. But. So anyways, I decided when I got out there, the weather was supposed to be good. And I told myself, if everything looks good, when I shoot the rifle on target in camp, I'm going to hunt the 338. It's got a scope with some holdovers in it. So it's not a big long range. It's walnut, it's blued, 3.5 to 10 power scope on it. And so I decided, I'm going to use it. So I did, and everything worked out just fine. And, I think Paul, the guide, he was like, I don't know how you're packing that around out here. I'd be afraid of marking it up, and everything. But pretty walnut. There's still nothing like it. I still like, a classic gun, classic rifle.
Did you scratch a line?
Not that I know of. No.
No, you didn't put like a tally mark?
Yeah.
No.
Wow.
No. Sorry.
So the 338, you said you hand loaded those rounds.
I did. Yeah.
How did you go about, for me, it would be a hunt of a lifetime, but big hunt.
Yep.
And, how'd you go about picking the bullet, picking the powder charge, picking all that stuff?
Well, I wasn't planning on using that rifle.
Right.
Yeah. So this was a last minute thing of what do I have on hand? I had the cut stuff zeroed in the 300 from when we hunted mule deer. And so again, that was kind of going to be the primary. The 338 was just an afterthought as a spare. But the bullets that I was working with was just kind of it was me experimenting with one of my rifles with some bullets that are on the market right now called hammers. They're solid copper bullets, and they lose the nose kind of like a non-conventional rest of the way the copper usually pedals back. And a friend of mine, it was the John with the 28 Nosler, was saying, "Hey, I've shot some of these. He hand loads everything, and he said you should try them. They're very, very accurate. They're different than things I've shot in the past." And so, I said, "Okay, yeah, sure." Like I said, I wasn't planning on necessarily using them. for hunting. I was just experimenting. I wanted to see how they shoot, what kind of velocity I get, what kind of accuracy I'm getting. And that just happened to be the last load that I was testing in that rifle, and loaded them up and said, okay, here it is. But, what I would normally do is, the 338 is definitely adequate as an elk cartridge, so it wouldn't have mattered what I was using in it. It would have been fine. But from a hand loading standpoint, I'm pretty detailed with all that stuff and how I prep my cases and all that, and make sure every one of them's got a flash hole and they all got powder in them, and
details.
Oh yeah,
attention.
But just going out and shooting and testing a lot and making sure. I probably shoot way more than a person needs to, but makes me feel better. It makes me, have 100% confidence in what I'm using. And so bullet selection, is going to be, bullet placement and bullet selection are going to be so important, more important than the size of the cartridge and the, bullet that you're shooting. And so for elk, good controlled expansion bullets that are going to get good penetration. And we've talked about them a lot here on the podcast about shooting cut or Sirocco, some PLR. Paul, I don't know how many elk he's taken with the 140 core locked and the 280. So we probably get into the weeds more than what, is really needed. Out of the cartridges that were used on my particular hunt, they were all fine. Put the bullet in the right place. And, that just kind of, it's our hobby. That's what we do. So I wouldn't know what to do to just have one rifle and one load that I had to shoot all the time.
Yeah. Snooze fest. But what people don't really think about, like you said, everyone took an elk within 200 yards. That's pretty close.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Everyone thinks 500-yard shots.
There was a few areas out there where there would have been an opportunity if you'd have, wanted to stretch it out, 400 or 500, talking with Paul. He said, he was personally, willing to shoot to 6 for himself personally. He had shot that far and things like that. So, but you get up in some situations. The wind was blowing one time when we were up on the wall glassing, and we were seeing some elk that were 400 or 500 yards away. I'd already tagged out. We were just glassing for the other John. And I'm thinking to myself, gosh, would I want to be trying to shoot right now? Is there a place to get steady and things like that? So, probably one of the things in preparation or not being in the situation is talking to your guide about, how far you're willing to shoot, what you're comfortable with, so that you don't feel pressured to shoot something that you're not. If there's an elk at 500 yards and your guide's going, yeah, shoot him, you don't need to pull the trigger. So, Paul and I had that discussion as we were getting to know each other, this is what I'm willing to do. This is what I'm not going to do. And of course, he was top notch, and he's like, oh, I would never want somebody to shoot something that they weren't comfortable with. So that way he at least knew what my expectation was. Just that and, getting to know him, made it like, cause you're with him a lot when you're hunting.
Yeah. And also understanding to a certain extent, like the range at which you're comfortable shooting might make it so you cannot harvest something. But I still wouldn't shoot outside my comfort range ever.
Oh, no. But, I can see where it wouldn't be hard to do in the moment.
Sure.
You think the conditions are right. Here it is. And, so there's a lot of pressure in those situations. So especially for somebody that maybe hasn't been in it before. That first time maybe on a big hunt, something like that. And it's like, okay, there he is, he's 400 yards. And it's like, well, what do I do? So shoot your rifles, know how far you can shoot, know what your ability is, and don't compromise on it.
Right. Well, that was a great hunt, great story. I know that it's just the beginning of hunting season while we're recording this podcast. What do you have coming up?
Well, we've been to Kansas once already. For youth rifle. My youngest son, going on a mule deer hunt. That was a personal hunt. The mule deer hunt is mid-November. We're going to Southwest Texas with some riders, go over some product. And then I've got another personal hunt after that.
So whitetail, mule deer,
and then whitetail.
And then whitetail again. Yeah. I'm going to Missouri, y'all. I'm so excited. I've never.
Girls?
All girls, all women.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Yeah, I'll let y'all. We'll have to go over that in another podcast episode when I get back. But
that's with NRA or something?
it is, yeah.
That'll be fun.
NRA Women's
yeah.
Hunt. Yeah, super pumped. Guided hunt.
Started shooting yet?
Yes.
Good.
Actually, which is not normal for me, but I don't want to get out there and embarrass myself, to be so honest. And I mean, my first guided deer hunting experience. I've been on duck hunts. I've been on guided duck hunts, and that's it.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting. I'll have to report back. But John, what's next for you? I know you go on some crazy stuff.
Well, we've got the a whitetail hunt later this year. It'll be in Illinois, second gun season, and it's going to be some 360 buckhammer new loads. So it's going to be a media hunt, be some riders there. So that'll be the next one up for me. Mm-hmm. Looking forward to that. We've got some new stuff to talk about there, so they'll probably see that coming out next year. But other than that, for me right now, that's all that's on the books. But my books are open, so
sign us up.
So we'll see. We're going to talk to my friends. One of the things that I like to do is hunt with people that I friends of mine, enjoy that experience with them. So we'll probably get together and chat a little bit after the first of the year, and we might do another elk hunt next year. There was some conversation maybe about doing an antelope hunt next year. Mm-hmm. For me, my bucket list, I still want to go up to Alaska and hunt brown bear, and then I want to get back to Africa and hunt buffalo. I've done that before, but I enjoyed it, so I want to do that, and I want to get a leopard. Put that on the list.
Oh, that'd be crazy.
So that'll be what I'll be looking at. Probably for myself and within the next, maybe 2 to 3 years or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know, dream hunts for me is definitely caribou in Alaska, but I still am chasing that elk in Colorado. Yep. So I'm very envious, but very excited for you.
Well, one of the places that we were talking about going maybe next year or the year after is a little bit northeast of where we hunted. Mm-hmm. And we've seen some pictures of some elk they were taken off of this ranch, and the trees and things on this particular area are not the same where we were at. So the antlers of those elk were very white, kind of ivory colored, because they don't have the same stuff to rub on to get the sap and everything in them. So it's pretty interesting.
Are they in those aspens, you think, like those wider trees?
No, we had aspens where we were at.
Okay.
This is probably a little bit more Plains Canyon type, terrain.
Interesting.
So that'll be interesting. There were they were killing some stompers out there, like 360, 370s. But this place, from what I was told, hadn't been hunted heavily in like 30 years. And our outfitter just got, they just got the hunting rights to this place. Mm-hmm. And, so yeah. So we're tossing that around as well. And
you're going to invite your podcast host, Audrey, to go
for a live shot.
Yeah, live podcast at the elk at elk camp
from the valley.
I'm just saying, John.
I see how it is. Put me on this side of the table.
Separation. No, just kidding. Well, there you have it, guys. Remington is on the rise. Like, comment, subscribe, and be sure to share this podcast with your hunting or shooting buddies. And tell us about your guided hunts or your hunts that you have coming up this year in the comments below. If you want to email me or Chris or John here, you can email us at podcast@remington.com. Thanks for listening.